Let's do it. Let's do it. For all the folks in here, thank you everyone for joining. Okay, my name is Justine. My pronouns are she and her. I'm really happy to be your host today. This is our May panel for Asian Wander Women. A little bit about Asian Wander Women before we get into things. Whether you're new to the community or you're familiar with it or watching this later, I'll just tell you a little bit about us. We are an online Facebook community group founded by Emily Fang and Ivy Xu. It was created in 2020 during the pandemic to provide resources and inspire female Asians who are nomadic. Whether you are working a remote job, a location-independent digital entrepreneur, an expat, teaching English in a foreign country, a frequent traveler with a home base, or someone who desires the nomadic life, Asian Wander Women is for you. We are now a 2,000 plus. Wow, that's really exciting. The number grows every time I say this. We are now a 2,000 plus organically grown community in various cities like Taipei, New York, San Francisco, Toronto, Singapore, and many more. And today we have our special guest, Jay Yang, which is always funny for me to say because our initials are so similar.
We're both Jay Yang.
Yeah, Jay Yang is with us, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her move from Canada to France. So I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for joining today. So my name is actually Janing, but Jay for short. I currently work at L'Oreal and in product development and product marketing. So I moved to Paris pretty recently, I think 4 months ago now. Previously, I was working at the same company in Canada. Long story short for now is that they eventually moved me from the Canadian team to the global head office. So that's why I was able to make the move. I'm really excited to be here because I think, like many of you guys, working abroad and, living abroad has been kind of a dream, period. Like it's been something I've known I've always wanted to do and that I planned on doing because I knew it was going to happen. So I'm really happy that it finally did. And I'm happy to help and share my experience today.
Thank you. And I think maybe dive in a little bit more into the process of the years in the making. You have been dreaming about moving, so tell us a little bit about what really led up to it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think as a kid, like my parents really instilled in me like a lot of independence. And also I had moved out for university. And then after university, I then moved out for work. So I have been kind of like living by myself, let's say, since I was like 17, 18. So it's been a few years now. And so I've always kind of like known that I love like exploring, moving, like that was just kind of like my thing. And I traveled a lot with my parents, so I knew I loved it. And I love working with different people and different cultures. So that was definitely kind of like the path I was headed towards. And then I had joined specifically L'Oreal because it's a global company. I know they have for those who don't know, L'Oreal own many, many, many different brands. For example, L'Oreal Paris was the original one, but now they also own many brands like YSL, Armani, Kiehl's, La Roche-Posay, Vichy, CeraVe. Now that's one super popular. So we own all sorts of brands from cosmetic drugstore products. So like brands that you find at Walmart, at Shoppers Drug Mart for those who are Canadian, and all the way to like luxury goods, products, department store, Sephora level. So we own like over like, I think 50 brands globally speaking. And we have offices in every basically major city, major country city. So I knew that there was a lot of possibility with L'Oreal in terms of relocation. Like I'm sure it was something that they could do. So that was something that I had pitched from my internship days at L'Oreal to HR. And then took on the internship, came back as a trainee, did the traineeship, assistant position, manager position, and then ultimately product development, kind of global strategy and product marketing.
Amazing. And so through all of those roles, this last one with product development is the one that got you into moving.
Well, this is the one I'm doing right now. So in Canada, I was working on specifically managing the international portfolio that was in Canada. And kind of rolling it out. It's kind of like a go to launch process. So you take the product from international, you implement, adapt. So the 4 Ps like product, place, price. There's one more, but oh God. But basically take it, adapt it to Canada legally, you know, everything, packaging, the messaging, the wording, all that, logistics, demand planning, and roll it out in Canada if it makes sense. And that went really well. We went from being the number 6 brand nationally in terms of sunscreen, because that was the big portfolio I was managing, to last year we became the number 1. So we moved super quick in the 3 years I was there, and ultimately that led to like brand growth globally, and therefore they needed some more hands on deck on the international team. So then that's when they called for me.
Perfect. And as you were going through the 4 Ps, I was like, I know you're off work hours. I didn't mean to make you use your work brain.
No. I was like, I should know this probably. It's been a while since I looked at my marketing textbook, I must admit.
And let's shift a little bit from the work side to your, I guess, the life you're living right now in France a little bit. I think we should start at the beginning of, because work helped you with the transition, were there things that you still had to deal with on your side that were difficult in terms of visas or anything like logistically with the move that might be helpful for others who are considering this move?
Yeah, I think a lot of things are very specific to France. France has like a very different culture in terms of versus North America. I think North America and even Asia, I would say, is very like efficiency focused. We're very much like, let's get this done, like the faster the better, you know. France, that's not really the that's not really the mentality. The mentality is really like, I will get it done, but it doesn't have to be like right away. Like it'll get done. So I think one, that's great. Like I think it's a very nice way to kind of like enjoy life and not put pressure on yourself. But when you're the receiving end as a customer, for example, Wi-Fi was a nightmare. It's like such a small thing, but it represents like this happens kind of everywhere. So for example, getting Wi-Fi, I didn't have Wi-Fi for a good 2 weeks. And then they came, they're like, it's not, the fiber isn't installed, we got to install it. And so they're like, we'll come back. And that was a week later. Like, I was like, how is this possible? Like, I'm not waiting a week in Canada. This would have been done the next day, or in Asia, this would be done the same day. So there are a lot of cultural mentality differences that kind of bleed into everything, right? So in this case, it was Wi-Fi. It took 3 weeks for me to get Wi-Fi, among other things. But that was one of the biggest pain points, I think, in just getting my life set up, is not having the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, which is huge, especially if you're moving there for work. You need to work.
If you're a digital nomad, you know, you kind of need your Wi-Fi. Cafes aren't really as open to people working as they are in North America. In North America, I would literally go downstairs, find a cafe, and just sit there all day. No one cares. But in France, you sit at a cafe to chat with friends, not to work. So most cafes, unless you're going to a co-op cafe, which will cost you money by the hour, most cafes will not allow you to kind of work in the cafe.
Yeah, and it's definitely part of the culture. Like I remember when I was in France and looking at people sitting on patios and sitting at cafes, it's totally a thing of leisure, right? You're there to enjoy yourself, take it slow, enjoy your coffee, just socialize. It's definitely not a place for work the way we associate it in North America. So I totally understand that. Yeah. When you were moving, I think maybe you speak French. Do you speak French? You do.
I luckily do. So being in Canada's technically, we're bilingual. I can't say that everyone speaks French, but for the most part, all of us have to take like, I think up to like a certain year of basic French, where you kind of take one class for like, I think 6 years, 7 years. I ended up taking French immersion, which means I did all my classes in French from grade 1 to actually the first year of university, except for like your main classes like math, English, music, gym. Everything for me was pretty much in French. So that luckily helped a lot.
Yeah, I wasn't in French immersion, but also being Canadian, I took French for many years, and the French that I had built up until grade 12, I took it all through high school.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I lost most of it though, because by the time I was able to take time to go to France myself to travel, it had been a decade since I'd used my French. And so I lost so much of it. And I have this funny story of me trying to speak French. and just like using the wrong vocabulary and having so many miscommunications. So I'm sure, yeah, having the language helps a lot as well with the transition.
I think especially in France, it helps a lot. I think a lot of my expat colleagues at L'Oreal, a lot of them are coming from China, doing a master's in France, and then going straight to L'Oreal. That's actually a lot of my colleagues there are doing that path, and most of them like they came from China, like let's say 2 years ago. Like they don't speak any French, like they're really learning, and this is where they do have a lot of issues because I think France is really a country where learning a few words, learning a few sentences, like a little goes a long way. And it just makes your life a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you can immerse yourself way more into the community. And actually, before I talk about community, I just want to note that Emily did put a question into our group or into the chat here. As we're discussing, if you have questions that come up that you'd like to ask, we will have a Q&A session afterwards and I will address all the questions. But as they come up, feel free to put them in the chat so you don't forget them. But yeah, in terms of building community, how has it been to move to a foreign place and make new friends and meet new people? What has that been like?
It's been great. Like, I think first of all, I think unfortunately France is not as big of a huge expat country versus another place like, for example, the UK, London, or Amsterdam. I think from just my initial kind of look, I would say that if you're looking for English speakers, that's probably your best two countries is moving to London and moving to Amsterdam. Like those are, I would say, the bigger hubs of the international community. France, Paris, it has a smaller one, but it's not like it doesn't exist. There are a lot of French people in Paris that actually went to McGill for university. So there's actually a lot of people I've met that are alumni from Canada. So you do have a lot of French people that travel a lot, but I wouldn't say that the international community here is big. So given that, I have had a harder time than expected to kind of build a circle of friends that I truly like feel like I'm back at home with. But I'm 4 months in, so that's also normal. I'm making new friends like every day, every week. I personally, I love meeting new people and like interesting people that come from different backgrounds, that like you find out like why they in Paris. And so for me, that kind of process has been a lot of fun. Yeah, but it hasn't been without challenge.
Yeah. What tools are you using, or like what avenues are you going down to meet new people? Are you going through like community groups online, or are you attending, I don't know, I find group like workout classes or sports or something in a city is always a great way to meet people, but what are you doing these days?
Yeah, good question. So I think I've tried so many things. I think I'm like a very social, extroverted person, so that definitely helps. And I think for someone to go on an expat journey, especially to a country that you might not have any friends, like you really gotta like take out all your extroverted energy and expend it. Like, so if that's something you struggle with, like that's a skill that you'll need to, a muscle that you're gonna really need to flex moving abroad. For me, it's been, I start with my office, right? Like we do have expats at our offices. A lot of them are from China, but I love practicing my Chinese with them. So I will say yes to every event. I meet friends of friends and friends of friends through those events. That's kind of the first thing I went with, like your immediately closest colleagues that like seem nice. You grab coffee with them, and then that leads to dinner, and then that leads to meeting their friends and all that. I also work out a lot. So you're totally right about the gym. So I also go to Barry's boot camp, and Barry's is a very like American chain that they actually have a building in Paris. And it turns out that a lot of people that go there are English speakers. Shocker. So I've also like kind of, striking up conversations with people at the boot camp. And that has led to, like meeting some cool people that are moving to Phuket, Paris for whatever reason. I think recently I made a friend that is doing cordon bleu, so like a chef program from the US. So I was like, oh, that's like really cool to meet. So that's one way. And then of course, if you have a friend, like grab that friend and be like, hey, I would love to meet you. I'm new. Like really play that I'm new to the town card, because everyone can understand that. And I've had really great like friends that have been very willing to kind of be like, hey, I'm having this big picnic happening, like bring a friend, come, like I'd love to introduce you to the community here. And just kind of like finding every possible path and maximizing it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When I moved from Toronto to Vancouver, that's almost exactly what I did, which was I looked on my socials, like on Facebook, to see everyone I knew in the city of Vancouver. Doesn't matter
Exactly.
the degree to which I knew them,
Exactly. Just
friends
like,
or an
hey,
acquaintance.
coffee, like would love to
Yeah,
like, I know we never like spoke, but I would love to catch up. I just moved. Like it's kind of like that card that you can really play and people are super understanding. And if it's coffee, they're like, yeah, like sure, like no problem.
yeah, exactly. Very low effort for everybody, and just kind of like let's test the waters. It's almost like a first date again with this
A hundred
person. You haven't
percent.
talked to them in a long time, so it's really,
Yeah,
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 a great way to do
You're totally right. Yeah. It's basically like I've just been going on coffee dates.
it.
But
Which
they
works.
work. They work. They really do work.
Exactly. And okay, my next question is about the people in Paris, because you're talking a lot about expats, but I'd like to hear about the locals. But I
Mhm.
will preface this with like an asterisk by saying you cannot generalize any group of people while also recognizing that stereotypes may exist for a reason. And based on your personal experience, you will have experienced XYZ. So my question is really just, what are the people of Paris actually like? And are you making any friends who are locals, and what has that been like?
Yeah, honestly, I've had nothing but good experiences with like Parisians. It's funny because I think they have a terrible reputation. I was actually just talking about this with my one of my friends who is French but moved that went to McGill and then moved back to Paris eventually. And so she's like, you know, we get a terrible rep. And I'm like, yeah, I like when it comes to service, let's say, and I went to a restaurant or if I'm not in like the place that is like, you know, around the Louvre where they have like the most highest tourist density, like I've had amazing encounters with local French like service, like people are nice, like you know, like the typical experience people say is like, oh, like the French have horrible service, they don't get tipped, blah blah blah. But I've had excellent service. Everyone I've talked to ask questions for help have been super helpful. And so I think that's like a false stereotype. I think Paris is very touristy in certain areas, and I can totally understand why like some people get bad service. It's just there are so many tourists in July, August. It's insane.
Hmm.
Um, but Parisians themselves are not at all rude, like they're very nice. But I also think as a cultural aspect, they're more transparent with how they feel. If they're
Yes.
not happy with something, they're more willing, I would say, than other certain other like maybe people to tell you how they feel. So if they're not happy with this, they're like, this isn't great. You know, they'll tell you that. And I think some people take that as rude, but I would say they're just more honest about how they feel and their opinions. So that's kind of the vibe I've gotten from more of the local French people. Honestly, overall, they've all been like the New Yorkers of Europe. Exactly. They'll give you less of a politically correct answer. Basically, they'll kind of tell you as it is, which you can appreciate. And I think it just takes time for you to get used to. So for me, that's kind of been the locals. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw that as well. I would say I think for a lot of people it can come off really blunt
Yes.
or really just like very straightforward, but I honestly appreciate it because I think in North America we do a lot of like dancing around the subject or trying to just be really polite about
They
things.
hate that. They hate that here.
Yeah. So they're just like, just say it, spit it out, say the thing. Tell us how you really feel. So
But
I
at the
can,
same time, they also can't take it if you go too blunt. It's like a nice in between. Like if you hurt their feelings, like they're not going to be happy, but they also like want to know how you really think. Yeah.
mm-hmm,
So it's
mm-hmm.
like a at least at work it's like that. You have to kind of manage
Fine
the way
wine, a little
the way
dance.
you address it. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Did you experience any culture shock moving to France?
I kind of briefly touched upon it earlier. It was the biggest one, and I think it's the one that is like kind of all encompassing is the fact that life is not about efficiency. Like life is not about work here, and work is not, you don't have to be efficient at work. So I think this was huge in terms of the mentality shift because you'll have people that are not on the same timeline or at the not same speed as you. And I see this the most in work because it impacts, you know, timelines and due dates and deadlines. And you're like, people get it done, but it's not always on the timeline you want it. And I think that's super like a cultural thing for France, and it's on how things are done. It's based on it's also in service and like just in the mentality of the French is really that was for me the biggest culture shock. That and also the long vacations they have here. So if you come in July and August, I will guarantee you that the city is the local Parisians here, including myself, will not be in town, and you will just have a lot of tourists in July and August. Those are like the 2 months that like everybody takes vacation. So if you are planning on coming as a tourist or visitor, make sure you call in ahead of the restaurants you want to go to see if they're even open, because most of them don't even bother updating Google Maps. Like you might just show up and it's just straight up closed till September.
Oh my gosh, till September.
It's a July, August, the 2 months, everyone is gone. They're all in the south of France or they're traveling.
That makes sense though. Yeah, because with a city that has that many tourists, you want to avoid it, right? You want to avoid it.
You want to avoid it, and also it's hot like in the city. So those are like the two things that I think like are really apparent, I think.
Yeah. I'm just looking at Emily's question here really quick. What advice would you give to those who need to learn and pick up quickly on how to context switch when working with global teams? So like a little bit back career focus, but yeah, let's talk about that.
I think it's a good one. I think the biggest one is having an open mind. I think it's like, I think my boss had my ex-boss had this really good way, because she was an expat from Paris and that moved to Canada to lead the Canada team. And she could have like started implementing stuff, but what she did was for 90 days, she chose to just listen and observe. And like, I'm not saying do 90 days of listening and observing, but I'm saying that it's a great way to start is observing, right? Like, don't automatically assume that your way is the best way. Maybe it's the most efficient way, but that's not the way that things are done in this particular country or in this particular team. So in order to like learn and pick things up quickly, like you have to do by learning and observing. So I think you just have to see like, what are the dynamics? Like why does this feel foreign, or why does this feel different? And then really kind of like observing, thinking, digesting, and then doing, and not just doing it the way that you've always done it, because it's not always maybe the best way. And maybe even if it was the best way, it's not maybe the right way to do things in your new kind of context.
I feel like when you come from previous experience, you bring that baggage with you, whether that's good or bad, because you have that experience and then you want to apply it. And oftentimes I saw this in my previous industry, which was if you worked for another airline and you came over and you said, oh, but we used to do it a different way at our airline. We used to do it like this. And you think it's the best way to do it. And it's really easy to get into that mentality, but it's important. Yeah, the observation is really important. Did you implement that yourself when you joined the team?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I was like very frustrated, because I was like, oh, like, this one thing could take like a day. Why is it taking a week to get done? Like, it's the whole efficiency thing. So, like there's so many things like I want to get done, but I'm like, okay, well, like me pushing is not going to get things done. So maybe what I need to do is do a coffee chat with them. I need to have lunch with them. I need to maybe like speak to someone else and understand the situation from a different aspect. Like how was things done previously to me? So France is very like a country where who is very important, and having that social face-to-face interaction of spending time to get to know them, getting your coffee with them and chatting with them is huge in terms of getting things done. In Canada, you're kind of like, well, I'm being paid to, so, I get it done. But here it's like, you need to build a connection. People need to know you. People need to understand you. And so that's kind of how that was one of the things that I learned when I first joined. Yeah.
And I would say that that's a good lesson that's applicable to all parts of the world. I think you're right. In North America, I definitely, at my last job, I was really focused on, okay, I just joined this new team. They've told me to set up a few coffee chats with team members just to get to know people. But during those coffee chats, I was like, oh, I've set this meeting up for 30 minutes. Maybe it could have just been 15. Like, how much time do I really need to like have a little coffee chat with someone before we dive into the work? But really having those foundations of the relationship being more solidified, having that can really help you move the work forward in the future, right? Having that relationship.
Yeah. And just kind of reflecting on, okay, well, things aren't working. Why aren't they working? Instead of just doing things as you would always do and being kind of ignorant. So never assume, always ask questions, and like play that, hey, like why, like ask for help, and all that, and like really listen and observe. And that's kind of like the fundamentals.
Yeah. What would you have wanted to know as your younger self about a career in marketing that you're in now?
Yeah, I think this was a huge thing for like anyone in marketing. I think in university, when you do like a business degree in marketing, they teach you all these like amazing marketing things about building a campaign, building a product, how to market it, who's your consumer. And it's almost like a little bit of a fantasy, because the reality is, if you're not in a hub country, so this is like for beauty and cosmetics, this is going to be Paris. This is maybe going to be New York, because there are some indie brands that start in New York. This could be Japan, like this is a Japanese brand. But if you're not in one of these hub cities where you're literally the development and the start of a brand or a product, the marketing you do in a country. So I'm saying like the marketing I was doing in Canada, for example. So I worked on the brand La Roche-Posay. I was marketing their sunscreen products. I also worked at Shiseido. I was doing sunscreen as well and anti-aging there. The marketing you do, for example, in a Canada market where you're taking from these hubs. So I'm taking from Paris, where Paris is all the innovation, the inception. I'm taking it, I'm adapting it. You're not going to get the chance really to create things from scratch. Most likely the marketing job that you would be doing is taking these products that have already been developed, already have a 360 plan around it. You would be just localizing it. You would be taking this and being like, well, does this particular product make sense for the Canadian market? Yes or no? If yes, do I need to tweak it? Does this communication, like, is this something we say in Canada, or like, no, this is very like French language? There's a lot of adapting. And then there's a lot of execution, like bringing it to market, bringing it in stores, doing displays, doing e-com. That's the type of work you would be doing in a country that is going to market, which is actually most countries. But this is not the marketing you think you're getting into when you study marketing. So I think the thing I wish I knew as a kid, and I realized very quickly as an intern at Shiseido, was like, hey, this is not what I thought marketing was. So it was something more of a managing expectations I wish I had. And that's why I did take this role in Paris, is because, well, if I do want to be doing product innovation, product development, and building the 360 of a product, which is now what I'm doing. So like I'm doing the opposite, the other side, right? Like I did the execution and now I'm doing the product development. You need to be going to these hubs. You need to go find a team that is creating the product. So for example, you have if you're in Taiwan, then of course you should find a Taiwanese brand or a brand that is developing in Taiwan, or else what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking products that are maybe coming from Japan and then just adapting it to the Taiwanese market, which is fine, but that's not something they really teach you in school and they tell you in school. So when I came in, I was very like, this is not what I thought my job would be, and I wish I knew that.
Yeah, setting expectation setting, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And thinking about, is this what you want? And if it's not what you want, then maybe you need to take a different position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to open up the floor to questions, whether it's about, Jay's experience in the business world or whether it's about the move specifically. I think this is a really cool opportunity to like pick the brain of someone who is not just passing through, because I think many of us, like myself, have passed through Paris on travels or passed through France during travels, but we've never actually moved or lived or stayed there for an extended period of time. And I think you were saying you are planning to be there for the next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you will definitely be building your experience and fully living there. And so just opening up the floor to anyone who has any questions about this transitional time and like moving to a foreign country or learning more about marketing, learning more about working in beauty, whatever it may be. If you have questions, feel free to either pop them in the chat or you can turn off your mics or cam on, whatever you're comfortable with. But if you have any questions, this is the time.
Oh, hey, Cheryl.
Hey Shay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for this session. It's been really like informative, and I'm actually personally I'm considering moving to France myself for business school. So I was very interested in this in particular. I think my question would be like, what was like, I don't know if this was answered already, sorry. Like, what was the biggest challenge that you like overcame, like moving to Paris?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the efficiency thing, because it's part of my personality to get stuff done. Like I want to get things done. I want to get things moving. I don't want something to sit there and pile up. Like I want to like clear it. And I think part of the French culture, at least at my office, and I think in general, is like it'll get done. It's just not on your time. Like you have to be able to let go and be able to like let go of that North American rhythm you have. I think in the US it's even stronger, but in Canada we're okay, but we have like deadlines and we have expectations that like your team delivers, and you kind of expect them to deliver as you asked. But everyone has their own rhythm, everyone has their own timeline. And I think the biggest takeaway and learning of this challenge I had was learning to how can I work around their rhythm. So being able to adapt to not only the French culture, but also each individual person's kind of timeline. Yeah. So I think just like the ways of working in business are very different from that of North America. And that goes back to like the mentality of, you know, we're living, not like, what is it? Living to not work. Like, you know, that idea that's very true to the France spirit, which is great because like you go on vacation, you completely disconnect. No one, like, you should not be touching your emails. No one's gonna get back to you. Like, but you just also need to learn how to work with that on the other end. Yeah.
Thank you. I actually have a few more questions, but I don't want to hog the mic, so I can just let other people ask first.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, we can like popcorn to you and then come back to you, Cheryl. And if not, then feel free to fire off your questions. And then in terms of, yeah, moving for school, Cheryl, I was thinking about this. So I'm moving to Taiwan for school in August. And although it'll like the experience will be different because you're moving to a different country than I am, but I think the upcoming challenges for me, because I think that it's a little bit different if your office, like with Jay, with your company helping you with the move and the transition, it's a little bit different than doing it on your own and moving for school. It can be, for me, the challenges this summer as I'm ramping up are figuring out the visa situation. That's number one. Number two is like figuring out how much or how little I need to be packing to move my entire life over, right? Like, do I just want to start fresh? Like, what are the essentials for me to bring? What is going to be difficult for me to find in this new country? Because I mean, most of the world now is really accessible. You can just do online shopping to get what you need, but there's things that obviously you're familiar with at home that you might miss or will be harder to get access to. I messaged a bunch of my friends who already live in Taipei to be like, what are the things that you wish you had access to or you could get more easily? And they were just like, hot Cheetos. And I was like, I think I'll be
I
fine.
was gonna say all dressed Ruffles. Like I literally have friends bringing them to Paris for me because I can't get them here.
Yeah. So sometimes it's
Ketchup
just
chips.
the little touches of home that you want to bring with you, right? But like for the most part, I think it's not going to be like, oh, I have my favorite vacuum and I have to bring that with me. It's like you're going to find something new. So it might just be like food things that you're thinking about. And then just like making sure I have all of the admin stuff done in a reasonable amount of time to give myself enough time to transition into the move. Because I'm like, some things, the application process might take 2 months to process, or this one might be, only 30 days or whatever it may be. So just making sure you give yourself as much time as possible to get all those admin pieces done before you start transitioning into the move, because you don't realize how many pieces you need to tick off. And so it can really catch you off guard. So those are like my moving for school tips.
Thank you both.
No problem. Did anyone else have any questions? I think Emily is. Yeah.
Yes. Hello.
Family.
So hi. I think there was one interesting moment where I myself had like a pivotal moment where I was like, oh, I could potentially retire or live elsewhere in like Asia, perhaps, right? Because I think as an American, I'm like, no, I'm going to retire in California. Like, this is my home. This is where I'm going to stay for the rest of my life. Like, have you ever had like an aha moment where you're thinking, oh, the quality of life is better in Europe? Or perhaps like you could potentially have just like switch your entire life over there instead of coming back to Canada? I'm just curious.
Yeah. I'm one of my biggest strengths and weaknesses, I would say, is I'm always planning my next move. And so I actually recently made a reel about this. It's like, Janie, you need to calm down. Like, you just moved 4 months and you're already thinking about where you're moving next and what your next move is, like planning that so that like, things can slowly roll out. So because of this type of personality I have, like I am here and I am only assuming that I'm here 2 to 3 years. Like I personally, I like Paris. I think there are a lot of great qualities and great things I'm going to take away from living here. But I personally don't yet see myself staying more than 2, 3 years. My mom actually lives in France, so she already knows this. Like I've already told her, like
Mhm.
I'm going to Asia next. Like she knows this. Um, so I haven't had that aha moment. Like the food's good. Like, like you can get a lot of things in Paris. You can travel, you have vacation. Like there are a lot of really great things. And it depends on like what your values are. For me, I just feel like if I maybe in 10 years, I could potentially come back to Paris to retire, but not in the near future at any point. Because I already know that there's more I want to see and it doesn't stop here.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll definitely check in after a couple of years and see where you're headed
Check in.
next.
Maybe I'll be like, I'm still in Paris. Like I just
know. Sounds good. Okay. I think yeah, feel free to, I think Cheryl had a bunch of questions to ask too. So you guys can continue that one as well.
Sorry.
This is great.
I guess like I was just curious, like when you were talking earlier about, refinding that like that close knit like circle of friends, like what is like missing for that to happen?
Yeah, I think it's funny, like you don't really feel like North American is a culture. Like you feel like it's like, I don't know if that makes sense. Sorry. Like I feel like different countries have like very strong cultures. You know what I mean? Like I feel like North America, we're all like very chill. Like there's nothing like very like strong or different about us. Like I think we're all like we all get along well and great. But the thing is then you start to realize that no, like people from North America, like there is a huge cultural aspect to it. I think there are a lot of people that I get a really along well with that are really nice, but nothing beats having a connection with another Asian American woman that like understands the North American kind of mindset and have that same similar background. I think that's just something I grew up with, I'm more comfortable with. And so that's kind of naturally what I'm seeking. And that has been a challenge to find a similar-ish profile here. I found like many friends in different backgrounds that I love and like are friends in different ways, but it's not quite the same as, having, like an Asian North American girlfriend or friend in general. And I only realized this because, I've been making friends left, right, center. I have like amazing friends that I'm like super thankful for and really happy that like I have different aspects on how they look at things, how they react, how they choose to approach things. Like it's really nice. But then I have friends that visit me for the weekend from Toronto and I'm just like, oh, like I miss this. Like this is so familiar. And like there is that like made me really realize that no, there is a huge cultural difference. So that's what I'm missing. And what's holding me, like, why do I not have it? I just think that there's not a lot of expats, honestly, from North America in Paris. I think there's a lot of European expats from Italy, from Germany, from Spain, from, like across Europe. There's actually also a lot of Chinese expats here because they do a master's program in Paris and then they end up staying. But there is not really a very strong North American Asian women, Asian community, I would say. Like even at L'Oreal office, I think there's maybe like 2 people maybe 2 people I've met that kind of like fit that kind of yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the friendship thing is hard because as adults, when you meet new people, you will never, it takes so much time to build the trust and foundations of friendship to be able to feel comfortable. And then I remember when I was traveling, to your point about meeting someone of a similar cultural background, I would say I met another Canadian traveler while I was in France, actually. And just knowing the same references of like knowing what Shoppers Drug Mart is such a small thing. But we were both complaining. We're like, what is the equivalent of Shoppers Drug Mart here? I just want to go pick up some mascara, right? Like, why is this so difficult? I just want to be able to pop into a drugstore and do that. And just having someone understand that reference made a huge difference to us connecting, right, at a deeper level. And so I can totally understand why having friends visit from home or meeting expats with a similar background would feel so like a warm hug, right? Like just a knowing, right?
And one thing to add to that, as a solution for those who are looking to make friends, is actually Bumble BFF. Like, I was like super shocked. I was like, wow, this app is actually great. Like, I've met up with a few girls. They were all very super sweet. And I actually made like one friend who's an expat. She's originally Vietnamese. So she lived in like, all over Southeast Asia. She lived in the Nordics, and then her husband's French. So eventually they moved to Paris, like very, very recently, like me as well. And like, she has that international Asian background that's like, we get along very well, like similar age. So this app has been actually quite successful, I would say. I think maybe at low expectations, but I've spoken to other expats as well, and they all use Bumble BFF, and we've all had very like positive like user experiences, let's say.
That's great.
Sorry, it's very marketing terms of me, my bad.
No, I would agree. I had a similar experience using it when I moved to Vancouver too. I think it's a cool tool to apply when you're in a new city. Rosie, you said you have 2 questions. Feel free to hop on and ask.
Yeah.
Seriously? Oh, okay.
Oh,
that's someone else. Sorry.
I had
Go for it, Rosie.
Yeah. What was I saying? I was interested in doing like a master's in acting or art. Is that common for expats in France?
Yeah, I would say in France, anything for masters, one, like, I know you didn't ask this, but the price is very affordable relative to North America. Second of all, anything in like the arts field, anything in the luxury goods, anything in the food, baking, like there are a lot of options in this. So this is why you'll meet a lot of very cool people in that particular scene here. And I think there are a lot of expats because kind of France is known for like the arts, the foods, everything like that.
Awesome. Yeah. If you know any programs, I'd love to hear about them. And then my second question, oh man, I hope I didn't lose it, but if we want to go to someone else until I find it.
Sure, yeah. As you collect your thoughts, we have a question from Shiba in the chat. What is the queer scene like in Paris? Any idea?
So xenophobia, racism, queerphobia. No, I would say Paris is very like open, like super accepting, super open. You have areas like Le Marais, which is like a neighborhood on the east side that's like full of like gay bars. Like I think there's this one where like this naked man just like showers, like it's like for gays, like, and it's just like a clear shower, like you stare at him doing his business. It's very accepted. Like people love to like visit these bars, even if you're straight or, it doesn't matter. Like I would say that Paris is one of the cities that people truly do not judge you at all. Like we're all very open to this. And I think this was also very much reflected in Montreal. Like, so before Paris, I was in Montreal, Canada, where it was like a very French speaking part of Canada, and super open. Even L'Oreal, like I think we have like quite a diverse background in that sense as well. So if that's a worry, like I think in Paris, I can't speak for all of France, like especially if you go to maybe the smaller cities, but as far as the major cities in Italy, in France, and like in the Netherlands, like all very, I would say all relatively very accepting.
Yeah, I would say that's my experience with it as well, just traveling through. I would say because they're like, whether or not there's lots of expats, it's still a very international city because of how many tourists come through. And so you see people from all walks of life in the city. And so it's just, the cities are catered to accepting all sorts of groups with like many different neighborhoods and underground communities and cultures. So yeah, being so international, you meet all sorts of people and it's very accepting. Yeah. Rosie, did that question come back to you, by the way?
Yes, it did. Thank you. I wanted to ask about beauty jobs. So my background is in UX product development, but I hate pushing pixels. So I'm looking for a new job. I don't know what beauty is like, and I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah. Beauty is like a huge industry. Like, right, like you hear about like the lipstick effect, where I think it was like in the US that it was like the market crashed and everything, everyone stopped buying everything except this, and everything declined in sales except for lipsticks. So it's kind of like, it's true, and from what I hear it's true, and it's a metaphor to say that like beauty is a growing market. And I can say that I know that we've kind of been in a recession, and with COVID and all the closures, like I think everyone stopped doing everything except skincare. Like if you guys haven't seen, like TikTok exploded on skincare, like sun care like is now one of the best things to buy, which I've always known, but it was always hard to communicate this. But so beauty is just this huge vast market with a lot of opportunities in terms of creativity. If you want to be part of the product creation, there's a product for everybody. So in that sense, it's very open in terms of what you want to do. There's always a product for everybody. So if you want to develop products specifically for a type of person, for skin diseases, for different ethnicities, because everyone has different types of skin, hair, you know, aesthetic. Like I think in this place, this is where you do have a lot of creativity. That being said, if you are looking for creativity, it really would be in a brand or in a company that is creating products, not just adapting and launching. So this goes back to like, you know, what I was talking about earlier, because when you are adapting and when you are launching a product, you have less creativity because the brand already has its DNA, and you're not going to just put out a communication, an image, a marketing plan that is out of character for this particular brand. So I would say when you are in like a country that is rolling out a product, you have creativity within a box. And then when you're more on the inception side, in product development, that's where you're kind of like setting the tone for the next few years to come. So you do have to like be a little more like adventurous and daring. So you do have more creative space to develop and imagine the future of the skincare beauty market. And if you have any more specific questions, like let me know.
I guess like you specifically work on product development and marketing. What are some other I guess departments with great like entry roles?
Yeah. Actually, with your digital kind of background, there are a lot of companies that are like looking to have people that have digital experience. So we at L'Oreal, we have other jobs like content and creation, for example. So this is basically a team or a person that helps develop the visuals, helps create campaigns, more of the digital and literally the content creation side, right? So there are jobs similar to that. There are jobs that are more on in terms of, you know, in all aspects, like legal, scientific, like if you have more of a science background, that could be cool in terms of literally creating the products. I would say those are like the main marketing jobs. There's also PR, technically, that I would say the communications is also part of marketing. It touches upon that. You have e-commerce, right? So how the website feels and looks, and is this the best way to kind of like display our product, or how best could we help product navigation? And so that's also part of, I would touches upon marketing, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are 2 minutes to our wrap up. So I just wanted to ask if anyone else had any questions before we close out today.
I have one last question. Just curious, like, what are your work hours in France?
So this is the French work hours are you start later, but you also finish later. So I usually start at like, I get to the office around 9:30, 9:40. We do have longer lunches. So lunches are anywhere between 12 to 2 p.m. So usually, you know, we finish at 1:30. So it's like an hour and a half. And then it's very much a social job. Like France is very much a social communications type of job. So you need to take coffee chats. You need to kind of grab lunch with a coworker and get to know them. Like at least L'Oreal is like this, but I was told France is kind of like is more or less this type of culture. So you do have like coffee chats here and there that take half an hour and then half an hour here. I usually finish work about 7, I would say 7 p.m. is pretty normal. Like, so we do start later and we do finish later. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
And yeah, that was a great finishing question because that is every country is different. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's it for our fireside chat for this May. Thank you so much everyone for joining us for today. And we will have upcoming chats every month moving forward. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much, Jay, for joining us and taking the time out of your day for this. And I hope you all have great mornings, afternoons, evenings, wherever you are. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Justine.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.